What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Metz Talk. This is episode 8. Is it? 8.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes, it is. It's episode 8. You don't know. Check the notes. Episode 8.
Wow.
Move that mic closer. I cannot hear you.
What?
Yeah. This is episode 8.
Turn me up.
This is going to be an interesting one because we...
Go on.
We are going to be not talking about as much of a broad topic and more so hitting some quick news and then working through this list from Top Speed. And this list breaks down 10 uncomfortable truths about owning an electric car. Both of us have...
I feel like we've had questions like this
from family, from friends, all that kind of stuff about what it's actually like in real world. And I don't think this list does as great of a job of talking about like day-to-day things. So maybe we can hit on that a little bit from an actual owner's perspective, but just kind of hitting on what it's actually like day in and day out to own an electric car.
Because I mean, if you're thinking about picking something up, or if you have gotten these questions and don't know how to answer them, yeah,
this could be helpful for you. So first thing I've got here on the notes is the 2024 Hyundai Sonata. It got pretty much a complete redesign. They're calling it a facelift. I hate when people say facelift. It looks completely different on the outside.
It does.
You got to call it a redesign.
I really like it. I mean, I've liked Hyundai's designs, obviously.
I mean, anything that Hyundai makes is super sexy.
Whoever they picked up all the good designers. I don't know who they had to
They really
poach,
did.
but
They took somebody. But they're calling it a facelift for 2024 with a distinctive, expressive new front end and a revised powertrain lineup. So the turbocharged 1.6 liter is no longer available, and the base 2.5 liter four-cylinder is now being able to be paired with all-wheel drive, which is a first for the Sonata. The cabin was also upgraded with a standard 12.3-inch screen, a clean new design, and lots of straight lines.
I was gonna say we are moving out of the era of curves on curves. And
I think we can see that very clearly with the Santa Fe. That we actually didn't talk about the Santa Fe on this podcast at all, but that thing, have you seen it? The big...
Maybe. Let's get my live reaction.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It looks like a Land Rover.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look at the front end. It's like got literal rectangles on it.
I love it.
We hit a little bit on this last week when we talked about that new Texas EV tax, basically. But this hits a little bit closer to home. This is from our local WDRB news. Kentucky's new EV electricity tax seen as barrier to public chargers. Businesses that have installed publicly available EV chargers will have to quantify the amount of electricity dispensed from the charger and pay a monthly usage tax to the state.
Yeah, and it's so weird because one of the people who sort of pushed this law, State Senator Jimmy Higdon, said the goal was to capture revenue for state road funding from EV drivers passing through Kentucky. And okay, that's fair in kind of the abstract. Like we talked about with Texas, like you need some way, if EV drivers aren't paying a gas tax,
right,
how do you continue to fund state roads? If you are charging the people who install the chargers, the businesses who do it, all you're going to do is encourage fewer people to install chargers.
Right.
Especially free chargers. The idea behind a free charger is you put it in and then people come to your business. But now you have to install all this infrastructure to track how much charging the free charger is doing. And in addition to that cost, just have to pay out for it.
Yeah.
Apart from the electricity, which was almost negligible. And these chargers aren't the chargers that people passing through the state are going to be using, because these are slow. They're
level 2s.
Yeah. These are like, oh, come stay and visit and hang out and charge your car.
Yeah. These aren't fast chargers.
No.
I actually think this ties in really well with our list that we're going to be talking about. So let's hold on that until we get to the list. But finally, I wanted to talk quickly about this GTI, this ID GTI concept that got announced. This thing is nice. It's, again, just a concept right now, but I think of all the concept vehicles we've seen from these big brands, these, institutional brands or whatever, I feel like Volkswagen's done the best at putting out relatively similar production models to their concepts.
And this is a pretty grounded looking concept too.
Yes.
They are using elements of their interiors that they've already used. They have the parts for. It's just, hey, this brand that you love, the GTI, we're going to make it electric.
So that's cool. The ID GTI, we'll look forward to potentially seeing that when we're in our 40s. So let's go ahead and move to this list. So again, this is from Top Speed, and this is titled 10 Uncomfortable Truths About Owning an Electric Car. So I think what we do is we just work our way through the list, talk about kind of where there's validity to these concerns and where there's not, and then just a little brief bit on our personal experience in these specific categories, if you have them. Number 10 on this list is simply titled Range Anxiety is a Problem. What say you?
Yeah, I get this. I mean, especially first starting out, like that's all you can think about is like, it's not as simple as if I run out of juice, walk to the gas station and fill up a jerry can or whatever. Easy. But at the same time, it's a different, like, you have to think about it in a different way. Like you don't think about running your electric car once you start to own it for a while. You don't think about it running in the same way that you do a gas car. Like you aren't ever, I mean, unless you're doing a long trip, and that's a component of this, but you aren't ever really thinking like, oh, I got to fill up tomorrow. You just do it immediately. There's no like potential for getting low and forgetting to charge or whatever and running out. Like that's never anything that has come close to happening. So the real problem is going to be long distance stuff. And maybe that's what they mean by that. But in any sort of long distance situation, exactly, like you're not going out for a long distance drive of 200 miles.
Yeah.
You know the destination and you can plot out, okay, where can I hit in between here and there?
Yeah. And it takes a little bit of extra planning for sure. I think the issues are kind of makes me laugh because like if you run out of gas on a trip in the middle of the highway, your car's going to die in the middle of the highway, just like it's going to die in the middle of the highway if you're in an EV, right? The situation isn't going to be any different, and you're going to have to call a tow truck, and they're going to have to come and typically give you gas. What they can do, and what a lot of these tow trucks have now, is they have a little portable charger thing that you can plug in and get 10, 15 miles of range, right? Quickly in this little charging pack. It's almost like a little... it's
like a jump box.
Well,
defibrillator.
Yeah, defibrillator. It's like kind of that for your car.
Yeah.
So they have these now, and you can buy them for yourself if you wanted a little bit of extra security.
Right.
But you're right. Can you just put like 10 extra brain cells towards like planning out, hey, I need to stop a little bit earlier than I maybe would have before. And then you're fine. And
the car still works in a predictable way. Yeah. Like, okay, about where I'm going to run out of gas. Cars have been giving us mileage estimates for the last 20 years.
And it's going to adapt based on how you're driving, the conditions you're driving in.
Yeah, so if the worst case scenario, I'm going to run out too soon, you pull off the highway or you just sit in the far right lane and you go 40 miles an hour or whatever.
Slow it down a little bit, just be smarter.
Yeah.
And again, we're just getting more and more and more range. So this is going to become less and less of an issue.
Exactly.
And the faster charging, which we'll get to in a second, is going to help with that a lot. And I actually this is funny, I've owned my Bolt since 2021, and I have never once fast charged it. Never. Because I've never had a reason to.
Yeah.
I've never needed to. Even if I've traveled like an hour plus away, I've never needed to stop somewhere and charge it because it just makes it there and it makes it back. You got 200 and something miles of range.
Yeah, not to say, I mean, there are people whose either daily commutes are that long.
Sure.
I mean, if you live in a particularly rural area and you've got to go back and forth to work, there are some people who do that. But even then, I mean, you are going back and forth from work, you're getting home, hopefully.
Yeah.
And boom, you've got enough time to plug in and charge overnight. And in the morning, you're back up where you were.
Right.
If you are making, monthly trips or, vacation or whatever and going 500, 600, 800 miles or whatever, that's a trip that you would normally have planned out anyway. You're going to know, we need to get to Florida. This is the route that we take.
Right.
The extra step is just figuring out where are we going to stop in between. And there's something to be said for, and we'll talk about this in the next point, charging infrastructure being there. But that is not a problem that I've encountered to any meaningful degree. Like, okay, maybe I got to wait 20 minutes while this
Yeah.
person finishes up. But
Right. Especially for non-Tesla owners,
Yeah.
it's a little bit easier because Tesla charging stations, especially on the coastal states, can be a little bit packed. But my point of what I was going to say about never fast charging is I had a buddy of mine who asked me a couple weeks ago if he could borrow my Bolt because he's trying to decide whether he wants to buy a Bolt or a Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
And he's test driven the Tesla and he wants to test drive a Bolt and just see. And so I was like, yeah, no problem. So this past Sunday, he borrowed my Bolt for the day and they drove to Nashville and back. And he had it for about 12 hours.
Stopped in Bowling Green.
Stopped in Bowling Green both times to charge up, made it to Nashville, charged up a little bit in Nashville, back to Bowling Green, charged up, back to Louisville. And it didn't, like, their trip was around the same amount of time it would take you if you drove a gas car to Nashville.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit longer for charging. And if the Bolt was 150 kilowatt fast charging versus 50,
Right.
it would be even better.
That's the biggest thing in terms of barrier now is EVs for a while were significantly slower to charge up until like a year or two ago. And now, even with Tesla fast charging, you're talking about probably 2 to 3 times the amount of time you would spend at a gas station. And
Yeah.
now that is, you know, on the end of 2.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about the time being spent at a gas station being 5 minutes,
Right.
it's a negligible difference.
And again, if you can plan it around eating or bathroom breaks or things like that, to
Yes.
where you don't just want to just cruise through, fill up with gas and go.
Yeah.
Like where you want to get out, stretch your legs.
Well, and that's what most people do at a gas station anyway.
Exactly. No one's ever at a gas station. No one,
And
one
doesn't-
person gets
doesn't
out of the
get out
car.
of the car.
Nobody gets
Yeah.
out. Nobody goes to the bathroom. Like, if you could charge even 120 miles,
Yeah.
you know, and like make another.
Well, that's the other thing too, is a lot of the times that you're making these longer trips, you're not doing back up to 100%. You're saying, oh, I need enough to get me to the next charger.
Right.
And then that's it.
Let's hit on this charging infrastructure thing briefly.
Some of this I get.
Yeah, I guess. So number 9 is basically charging station infrastructure is still not enough. And that's true.
My issue with this is not, so I think charging infrastructure right now is, in terms of numbers, good enough to get you anywhere you need to go. I mean, you can get to a destination, charge at that assuming you can charge at that destination, which is not always a good assumption. But Electrify America will get you almost anywhere in the country. And then once you're there, you charge there and you're good to get back. The problem is making sure that when you get to those stations that you can charge and it will be a smooth, painless process.
Right.
Because sometimes there are issues with the apps. It's crazy that we haven't figured this out, or things won't take payment, or some of the chargers will be out of order and you have to wait or something. But beyond that, in terms of just the numbers, I think you could get just about anywhere. It'll take you, if you have to rely on level 2 stuff rather
Right.
than the fastest charging available, it'll take you longer, significantly longer in that case, but
yeah,
you
for sure.
can get there.
Yeah, and I think that your point you made about the just the pure fact that they exist doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to benefit you. I've seen a lot of people talk about basically having their lifeline be this one specific charging station and getting there and they're all offline, or especially in these more like rural areas where they don't get kind of as much upkeep
Right.
as some of the other places. Like your luck may vary, like actually,
Yeah.
you know, your experience may vary.
And this is not a
significantly.
problem for everybody. This is a problem for specific people who are highly reliant on those chargers.
Yeah.
Or if you are mid-trip and you need that charger to be there.
Yeah.
And
Especially, trips. But like, how often truly are people traveling? Like, I feel like it's not, I feel like people make it a bigger deal than it is because, yeah, maybe you go on a trip every once in a while, but really the 80% of your car ownership is going to
Yes.
be city driving in your local area.
yeah, and if you're buying your car strictly for, is this going to be good enough for traveling, then you probably have the means to not worry about it.
Yes, that's very true. All right, let's talk about number 8 here. Higher upfront costs. We've definitely hit on this when we talked about the Blazer EV being, you know, a decent chunk more expensive, 10 to 12,000 more expensive. And
Yeah.
I would say that's pretty standard right now.
Yeah.
So maybe 10 to 15 would be a safer range there, but it is more expensive to buy an electric version
Yeah.
of a gas vehicle. It just is.
And that's not to say, I mean, it will not always be that
Correct.
way. It's a supply problem.
Yeah.
Like you don't have the same infrastructure in place, and it's a problem that will scale down as we build up production, which is what's happening right now.
Yeah, we've already seen that. People think that it's like not worth that additional cost. And
Right.
again, as the ICE and electric start to get closer and closer together, like people are going to start choosing electric over that.
Yeah.
Because of the long-term kind of benefits of choosing that. Like
Yeah.
like you and I have talked about with, I went from paying $240 a month in gas to paying $20 more on my electric bill.
Right.
Like $220 worth of savings per month. Now that was when gas was really expensive. I don't even know how much gas costs right now. I feel ignorant, like illiterate.
Yeah.
But it makes a big difference. And honestly, like you could almost pay off a huge chunk of that difference over the ownership, the life, even a lease life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think looking at some stickers lately, they show like the average fuel savings
Sure.
or whatever.
Tesla factors that into the cost
Yeah.
on the configurator on the website.
The Ioniq 6 was something like $5,000 a year saved in gas money. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's like,
Again, this kind of goes back to the means thing. Like if you have the means to spend $12,000 to $15,000 more on like if you're buying a Blazer already
yeah.
and you have to spend $15,000 more to buy a Blazer EV, like you're probably okay. You're probably doing okay.
Just
in
make
life.
the jump.
Yeah, just make the jump. If you don't, and you really need something, there are options, like in the lower ranges.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's
that's
becoming more and more reasonable.
That's the thing. If you are looking to pick up an EV and you like things seem very expensive because you're looking at Teslas or even newer cars, the used car market for EVs right now is not bad at all. I mean,
Yeah.
you can do all right with a used Bolt or an older used Tesla and be fine.
I think that seamlessly transitions us here to number 7, which is the battery degradation problem.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that when it comes to the used market, because like you said a couple pods ago, the market, because you're looking a lot in the used market, and you said it is absolutely flooded with Leafs and Bolts.
Yep.
And
I probably would not do a Leaf because
yeah,
they're using an older charging plug, the CHAdeMO,
right.
and the charge speed on them is abysmal.
And it's
The battery is
it's a Leaf, so
super small, and it's a Leaf.
yeah. This kind of says, while electric car batteries have improved, battery degradation remains a potential issue. Over time, a battery's capacity to store and deliver power can decrease, resulting in reduced driving range and need for a costly replacement. Blah, blah, blah. They're improving battery technology. They have battery warranties for a certain number of miles and years. Yeah. And then there are things that you can do. So this is kind of what I wanted to talk about. For me, I'm leasing my car.
Right.
So like, it doesn't really matter to me, because I probably will just trade it in. It doesn't really matter to me what my battery percentage gets to by the time I turn it back in, because it's someone else's problem after that.
Yeah.
But for the long-term, effectiveness of my battery, I've only been charging to 80%. Now, some of that was because I got restricted to 80%. Yeah. But the thing is, like, I don't ever need more than 80% of my battery. So if I can impact my long-term health of my battery by only charging to 80% every time, then that's fine, and I can do that. Even if I was charging to 80%, I think what people need to understand is, like, Chevy gives you access, most manufacturers give you access to 100% of the battery, but there's like 20% more.
Yeah.
So once
left
you're
in reserve for emergencies or for padding.
Yes, for padding, exactly. So over time, when that 100% that you perceive that you're charging to starts to decrease, then that padding starts to bleed back into what is accessible to you. So really, your battery has more range and more capacity than what you think it does. So I don't think that it's going to be as big of an issue. I think you could get the same amount of mileage out of an electric vehicle like that you could get out of a vehicle before, you would just need to junk it all together. You know what I mean? I don't think there's that much of a discrepancy.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if your problem is battery health, then why don't we talk about how long the average component in a engine lasts?
Right.
Like alternators or
Yeah.
like any number of other things that are going to go out
Yeah.
and need to also be replaced.
And like, yeah, battery replacements can be expensive, but like so can an engine, and
Yes.
you know, so can any component of a
Yeah.
vehicle.
Oh, now I got to do my hood gasket.
Yeah,
Like,
everything costs money, and not to mention that on electric vehicles, your maintenance cost is basically zero. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you might have to get new
I've done
wheels.
literally nothing.
Yeah, I've done nothing as well. Outside of, I had a couple warranty things that got fixed,
Right.
like little things here and there, like some sealing around my trunk, and the little handle on my seat that slides it back and forth. I made an entire video about it if you guys are interested, on the things that failed for me or broke for me, but all that got fixed with my warranty. And neither of us have had battery replacements. I'm guessing you're just going to get a software update as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what they switched it to. That's what mine is too. But I still have to get that done, because when my buddy, like I mentioned, borrowed my Bolt, I was like, I'll charge it to 100% for you. And I went to try
you
and
won't.
swipe it up, and it was like, nope, 80%. And I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have the software update. So
Yeah.
I'm still stuck at 80%. But battery degradation, understand, it is a problem. It's a real thing. But guess what? It's also a problem on your freaking cell phone. Like,
Yeah.
it's a problem everywhere. Number 6, automakers must continue to raise charging speeds.
Yep.
How's this a problem? And how's this an uncomfortable truth? Like, everybody wants this and needs this. This is like a
Yeah.
positive.
And it's a thing that is happening. And
Yeah.
It's not like it's not being addressed.
It's happening, and it's happening rapidly.
Right.
Like, this
We've
is
gone from 50 in the Bolt to 350 in a lot of Hyundais in the span of 5 years.
Yeah, and like already the Equinox is projected. I don't think they've released it yet, have they? I think it's saying up to 150 kilowatt.
Oh, which is still
charging
not
on the
super.
Equinox.
You could do better than that.
You could do better than it, and some do better than that. But also, like, that's 3 times as fast as the Bolt.
Right.
The Blazer EV, 190. This is Chevy, who makes the Bolt, going up to these speeds. Like, all these other manufacturers, like you said, are way up there. Hyundai's way up there. Tesla's way up there. Like, these, like, mainstay traditional manufacturers are just going to continue to increase and increase and increase. Right. So, like, I really don't think this is like maybe a little bit of an issue right now, but like not really. And it's getting better like day by day.
Yeah.
So like, I wouldn't even think about this. This is a real one. Cold weather can affect cars.
Yeah.
Cold weather. Actually, that's kind of ironic that I say that, because it affects all cars, but it can definitely affect electric cars in a significant way.
Right.
So for you and I, we've had our Bolt through multiple seasons. Last year in December, we had a 2-day span where it was negative 23 degrees here in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yep.
And I got a notification on my car when I tried to get in it during that time period that said something along the lines of like, your propulsion motor like power has been decreased or something like that. It was literally so cold that I couldn't drive above like a certain speed. So this is a real thing.
Yeah, this is a real thing that people have thought about. I mean, if you look at like some of the most popular or some of the countries where EVs are the most popular, you will see the Scandinavian countries up there, where you're talking about countries that parts of them extend to the Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
And yet they're at like, what, 20%, probably higher than that now, EV adoption rate.
Really?
This isn't a thing people don't contend with on a daily basis and have solutions for already. You can keep your car plugged in and it'll run the battery conditioners so that the batteries stay at a good temperature. And
some of these vehicles have heat pumps.
Yep.
The Bolt does not yet, but
the biggest thing that we have seen is going to be range reduction.
Yeah.
And that can be substantial.
You also get mileage in it with an engine. You get less miles. So my range, this is approximate, but my range drops from about, because I only charged at 80%. So it drops from about 223 miles of range about in the summer at 80% to like 150-ish.
Yeah. I was going to say mine's probably close to that. It's the same, about anywhere from 50 to 70 miles difference.
Yeah.
And
which that
is
lot.
Not an insignificant chunk. No,
Yeah.
that is absolutely an issue. And that's something that'll just be factored in as we continue. I mean, maybe we get better at conditioning battery temperatures or finding battery materials that aren't as affected by temperature.
Yeah.
But
Number 4, this one is silly. When was this article published? March 2nd of this year. This is ridiculous. There are still not that many electric models. Every manufacturer now has multiple models.
I mean, if you're comparing it to gas models, sure. But
I mean, yeah, but you also have
some could say more than we need.
well, yes, way more than we need. And also, like, you're talking about, 40, 50 year head start, right?
Yeah. Well,
in some cases.
I was probably closer to like 100, but
yeah, but I mean, like, as far as like fleshed out lineups.
Sure. Yeah.
In lineups.
Yeah.
Chevy's lineup, they have.
It has solidly existed. Yeah. Probably for like 70 years.
Yeah. And you've had all of your different levels of each type of vehicle. You have all your sizes of sedans, all your sizes of, compacts, all your sizes of SUVs, all your sizes of trucks.
Right.
And you've had a long time to perfect that and fine tune that lineup.
Now the closest thing we have to that is you'd have to cross shop manufacturers. There's no, I really like Chevy, but I don't want something this big, or I don't want something as small as the Bolt. I want something a little bit bigger. You're going to have to cross shop. You're going to have to look at.
Not necessarily.
Not at this point. We're getting there.
We're getting pretty close, because you might be able to shop in brand now.
Yeah.
Some manufacturers you can't, but it's getting more and more, like Hyundai can. Yeah. Chevy, soon you'll be able to. Tesla, you can. I mean, Tesla's all EV, but Volkswagen, eventually you can. It's a lot more flexible than it's ever been. And you have just about every price point covered now, except for like your low price point.
Yeah, and that's not a super fleshed out price point for new cars in general.
Number 3 here is reduced towing capacity. This is something that I'm not super versed in.
You don't tow?
I don't tow, surprisingly.
As far as I understand it, it is an issue. Like, EVs will always make more torque, right?
Yeah.
But if we're talking about being able to tow things for an extended period of time, which is a lot of the time what you're going to need to do when you are towing. If you're towing for a business application, like you're talking about driving to and from a work site, which might be far away and isn't going to have the remote sort of charging infrastructure that you might need. If you're talking about towing an RV or a camper or something like that, well, you wouldn't tow an RV, but if you're talking about towing a camper, like that's going to be quite a trip, and you might be making more frequent stops at chargers. That is an issue, but that's something that gets resolved with battery size.
Most, if not all, of the vehicles that are going to be towing things are going to be trucks or very large SUVs, which have a lot more room for larger batteries.
I wouldn't be that surprised if we started to see some of the commonly towed, I don't know what you would call it, materia, like your campers or your sort of bigger construction tools start to implement battery banks into them.
Yeah,
so you
that'd
just
be super cool.
Plug it into your tailgate.
Or heck, even some kind of third-party solution where you have some kind of battery bank that could sit between or something along those lines, which would be hilarious. I'm just picturing like me carrying around one of those like big battery banks in my pocket to charge my phone, but like on my car.
I think it would need to be mounted into the thing because they would be so heavy.
That's true. Yeah. But I mean, it could be something that's like on wheels or something, or some kind of trailer mechanism that would connect the things together that would have a battery solution built into it. I just looked it up briefly because I just have no idea, but F-150 Lightning max towing capacity, 10,000 pounds. Ford F-150 normal gas powered, 1,400 pounds.
Yeah.
So you've got a 4,000 pound difference there. And for somebody who's towing construction equipment, campers,
other vehicles,
exactly, that could be a real issue. It's one of those things I have so little experience in. I feel like I'm kind of just talking out my rear end, but
I mean, like any other issue, like it's easy to see these as problems, but they're growing pains. Like none of these are unsolvable problems.
Yeah.
This is the trend that things are going on, so it's a pretty safe assumption that they're going to be solved.
Even if there's always a little bit of a nudge to a gas-powered vehicle, the only thing that they can really do is just shrink the gap, right? And if they can shrink the gap enough to where the towing capacities are similar enough, but outside of towing, the pros of the electric version outweigh the, gas powered version.
Right.
And people are still going to make that switch. They're
Right.
going to sacrifice that tiny bit of towing capacity. Unless they absolutely have to have it, they're going to sacrifice it for the pros of having an electric vehicle.
Yeah. The thing that I like to do in this situation is kind of reverse the perspectives and say, like, okay, if we had been using electric cars from the start and batteries were still the way that they are now, and then we started looking at, okay, maybe we should start doing gas cars. And then you started explaining to somebody all of the things that have to go into a gas car. Like, oh, the engine has all of these moving parts in it, and you have to fill it up with this liquid that you get at a gas station. Like, it's a tougher sell from the opposite perspective. Yeah. So you don't see like manufacturers who exclusively produce gas cars suddenly trying everything they can, except Mazda, maybe, trying everything they can to like make gas cars better so that they can compete. It's just sort of a foregone conclusion that EVs are going to be the dominant sort of vehicle. Mm-hmm. And we just got to do that. Yeah. We got to adapt and figure out the ways to bridge that gap.
Number 2 here. This is one that you and I looked at and both laughed. Low sound can be a problem. And what they basically mean by that is they're so quiet that they run, risk of hitting pedestrians.
Right.
Or anything.
Yeah.
Animals, pedestrians, you name it. And they have a YouTube link underneath of a girl walking out into the street and a BMW i3 coming at her. And the big text on the top says, "Are electric cars dangerously quiet?"
Yeah.
So if you guys are unfamiliar, electric cars are very quiet when driving, but at low speeds, every manufacturer has some kind of whirring or beeping or
some fun noise.
Some fun little noise. Some even have the ability to output like engine noise through the speaker system. I forget who does that.
I think BMW
is it BMW that does it?
Yeah.
Which is hilarious that you have like this dead quiet thing and then you have to crank out artificial noise. But like for the Bolt, it makes like this like high-pitched whirring noise.
It's sort of a space noise.
Space age whirring noise. And then as you speed up, it kind of goes and kind of but like the ID4, for example, it has a specific idling noise, and then it has a different noise when it's going in reverse. That's a little bit more high-pitched and loud. So, yeah, I mean, they're like quiet, but like not like unless you're like hard of hearing, actually,
right?
Like you're going to hear it.
Did people make this argument when we started to put like mufflers on cars? Like, oh, don't do mufflers. It makes the car too quiet, and people might get hit. Like,
or like hybrids.
Yeah,
like nobody's saying this about hybrids because hybrids at low speeds make no noise at all, and then the engine kicks in at a certain point.
If you've ever lived in a neighborhood with somebody's, they've got their cat cut off and they're have a muffler that looks this big or a tailpipe that looks that big and are driving through your neighborhood at 11 o'clock at night. I don't know. Suddenly this becomes less of an issue. Every car is very quiet.
Thank God that thing is loud.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. But my only like personal thing with this is like I'm wearing headphones most of the time. So if you're like, let's say you're jogging and you've got over the ears on or something like that. Earbuds, and with noise canceling, anything like that.
The noise isn't going to make a difference.
Yeah, it's not going to matter at that point. If a car's going to hit you, there's almost nothing you can actually do about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like hearing it's kind of hearing it makes no difference. You're just gonna hear when it's hitting you.
Well,
what's the difference?
Like there's a reason. I mean, if we can talk about blind people, and that is a separate issue, but I feel like an element of being blind is learning where crosswalks are and knowing the infrastructure of the place that you're walking around. So unless you are a sighted person who thinks the world kind of revolves around them and just walking out into the street without looking, also, like you're gonna see the car coming. The EVs aren't invisible.
Again, at the same time, like they do make noise.
Yeah, there's still like road noise.
Yeah, and especially if you're in a city situation where you're going at a crosswalk, like you're going at the speeds where you would hear the noise anyway.
Yeah,
and like again, they make noise, and when a car is driving through the wind, it makes noise.
Yeah, the tires are coming off the road.
Everything makes noise. It's not like they're levitating across the ground, and even then, they make wind noise. It's like it's ridiculous. I get it, but At the same time, I don't. All right, number one, EVs generate some environmental problems. I like how they phrase that. Really non-committal on that. The little blurb says, recycling and disposal of electric car batteries is a significant challenge. Electric car batteries contain several potentially hazardous materials, including heavy metals, toxic chemicals, which can pose a risk to the environment if not properly disposed of. Moreover, the process of recycling electric car batteries can be complex and very expensive. However, it's worth noting that many electric car manufacturers are investing in battery recycling technology and working to develop more sustainable and environmentally friendly battery materials, which could help overcome some of these challenges. It should be added that lithium in particular is reusable, so part of this problem can be solved with the appropriate investments.
Yeah, recycling electronics has always been a problem as long as we've had them. I mean, your batteries, even your alkaline batteries that you get from the grocery store are like, do not throw these away. Like, these need to be recycled because it is a heavy metal, and if you're disposing of it in a landfill, that's going to leach out into stuff. And we're already pretty good about, I mean, cars, there's a lot going on in a car. There's a lot there to salvage. There's a lot there to put into something else or to recycle because the body is made out of easily recyclable aluminum. Like, there's not a whole lot of waste in that process because there's something there that we can extract value out of. And I don't think EVs are going to be any different. Batteries introduce a new sort of complexity to that, but they still provide power to things. So who's to say that we aren't going to start stripping EV batteries out of old EVs and using them to power homes or to power, whatever else. Oh, you need a remote sort of antenna to put up. Here's a recycled EV battery and just drop this into the ground next to it. And there you go. Yeah. Like, people are going to find a way to use any of these things.
I know Apple does this specifically where they disassemble the phones in they have like robots that disassemble them. I forget the name of the robot that they use, but it's got a funny name. Daisy. I'm sure it's an acronym, but it disassembles and takes each piece out individually and they're able to recycle them in a way that's effective. And a lot of these manufacturers are doing a similar type of thing. There's an entire article on Car and Driver about EV battery recycling and how they ship them off to auto recyclers that have specialist firms that dismantle the packs, break them down to the wires, circuitry, plastics, and cells. And like you said, then you can take those cells and use them in different ways to where you're not just chucking them and saying, like, have fun, dissolving over the next million years or whatever. I love what you said when we talked about grid anxiety with the Texas stuff. Now that they are part of our everyday lives, people will develop solutions to the problems. Yeah. People don't just go, oh, we have a problem now. Sucks. We're never going to fix it. It's a matter of this is going to become more and more mainstream. So we're going to create more and more ways to solve the problems.
Humanity is all about the hustle. Yeah. If there's money to be made or if there's an opportunity to be filled, somebody is going to figure out a way to do it.
There's so much stuff within these battery packs that is extremely expensive. These metals and components and things. There's no way that these companies don't see this as an opportunity to absorb.
I mean, people already do. We're already like, and I don't know how sort of profitable this is, and maybe it's being put on people whose lives are affected by it, but people are already sort of extracting gold and copper and whatever out of junk electronics so that let's do this because we've got all of this waste, this e-waste, rather than having to go into a mine somewhere to pull it out. Yeah. If we can take apart old phones from the 80s and pull gold out of the circuit boards there, let's do that.
As much lack of credit as I want to give humanity sometimes, we are an intelligent species. We can come up with solutions to problems. They may take time, but as this becomes more and more prevalent and you get to the point where gas vehicles are the minority by any significant amount, we will have to have solution to these problems.
Yeah. We're not going to sit around surrounded by the corpses of old EVs. Yeah,
just stacking
I wish we could do anything with these.
All right. Let's hit this as the outro here. We just went through this giant list of uncomfortable truths about owning an electric car. Mm-hmm. What is something in your day-to-day experience owning an electric car?
What is my uncomfortable truth?
What is your Collin Farmer's uncomfortable truth about owning an electric car? And you can be critical here.
Yeah, of course. I almost want to say range anxiety.
Really?
At this point. Like, I wouldn't phrase it like that. Like, I've never been maybe once or twice I've been anxious, like, am I going to be able to make it home? But that's on me. That's because I cut it short and I was like, I wonder if I can make it home on this. I feel like I can. The mileage lines up, but I haven't given myself enough of a gap. But even then, that doesn't feel like a serious problem. That feels like me not wanting to be patient and wait the extra 20 minutes at a charger. I just want to go now. What about you?
I don't know if I'd call it like an uncomfortable truth, but just maybe the thing that I struggle with the most is trying to like convince people that they can switch.
Yeah.
Because, people know you have an electric car, and so they'll come to you when they're considering it and they'll say,
right.
I've heard this. And I feel like I'm always on the defensive when owning an EV, which is kind of an annoying place to be because nobody does that to you when you have a gas vehicle.
Right.
No one's like, well, that's a lot of emissions.
Yeah.
That's a lot of, you're really not.
There's a lot of parts in that car.
Yeah, there's a lot of parts in there that could go wrong.
Yeah.
Are they recycling those appropriately?
Yeah.
Like nobody does that with a gas vehicle, even though those are all very legit things that you could be concerned about. But I feel like I'm always on the defensive with owning an EV, and you're always trying to like convince people of the benefits. And all it takes, and I believe this to my core, all it takes is somebody trying it.
Yeah.
And you just don't when you ever hear people getting an EV and then being like, this isn't for me, I'm going back to a gas car.
Right.
I'm sure it's happened. Like everything's happened. But I feel like I hear that far, far less often than anything else. Like I would hear, I've never heard that anyone doing that, but trying to convince like my family members, especially ones that I know would benefit so much and it would make such a difference in their lives because they don't travel. Or best case scenario, they have one electric car, one gas car.
Right.
You drive around the city and do all your errands, do all your day-to-day stuff in your electric car. If you really want to travel, you've got a gas-powered car.
Yeah.
You can do your whole thing. Don't have to worry about it. And at least you're cutting your emissions in half. And at most, you're saving a ton of money on gas.
Yeah. I mean, even traveling, I feel like...
Even traveling, you can do it. But you know what I mean.
I feel like even if the gas money that you save, if you're saving $5,000 a year, you can afford a plane ticket.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to drive 8 hours. You can just be there
Exactly.
in 2.
So that's, I think, one of the biggest like hurdle for me is just being on the defensive all the time. I feel like I'm like propaganda for like electric vehicles.
It does feel like that because a lot of the time you're getting brought sort of third-hand information from people who like
don't really know that much about
don't know that much or like are actively against it for whatever their own reasons and are just sort of spreading misinformation, or people who have just heard things and
they say things like, I could never have an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why?
Yeah.
Like actually talk to me about why.
Yeah. That's where it comes in handy, like reversing the perspective. Like, okay, sell me on a gas car. Mm-hmm. And like, let's have this conversation of, all right, should you get a gas car? Well, here are all the problems that you have to deal with a gas car. And don't just take those problems for granted. Like apply the same measure of, critical analysis that you're going to do to a gas car, to an EV, and weigh it, truly evenly, and then see how it shakes out for you.
All right, guys, that was episode 8 of Metz Talk. We ran through the uncomfortable truths about owning an electric vehicle. Turns
out they only looked a little uncomfortable. They were actually not.
They're actually pretty comfortable. Not that bad. So hope you all enjoyed this. Again, you can interact with the show in 3 ways. You can email podcast@itsmetz.tech. You can text us at 502-509-4384. Or you can follow us on Instagram at Metz Talk Podcast, or Threads if you want to. Send us a DM. I haven't checked Threads, so send us a DM on Instagram, and we'll be sure to check out your topic idea on the show.
Yeah, if you have any questions about EV ownership too, I would love to be able to touch on those.
Yeah, that's huge. If you guys have any questions at all about what it's like in the real world, owning an EV, charging, day-to-day stuff, Collin and I have years of experience here, so... We're the best people to talk to.
The authorities.
We are the authority on owning EVs because we've had them for 2 years, 3 years. So, all right, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.